Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Yud Tet. We are near the top of daf Yud Tet Amud Aleph. We are at the two dots on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line. We are continuing our discussion in the second parak of Zevachim of different categories for which one of different categories of people that if they are involved in the receiving of the blood, then they mess up that stage, and therefore the korban will become not kosher. We have been talking about mechusar begadim, somebody who's lacking garments, and so we're going to now cite a mishnah. This is a mishnah in Eruvin that touches on this topic indirectly. And so let's take a look and we'll see how it connects to this whole concept of wearing garments. Because one of the categories that we quoted in a brisa was the fact that if you actually have something on, you have like a bandage underneath your garment, that in and of itself could be a problem because it serves as a chatzitza, a division, a separation between the garment and the person's body and the Kohen's body. And so Tanan Hassam, we learned over there in a Mishnah in Eruvin Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Bet. Kohen should lock up
Gimel.
etzba'o if
Where's
you have a
Gimel?
Kohen who's injured on their finger. Korech aleha gemi b'mikdash. In the Beit HaMikdash, they can put some, a reed grass wrapper on it, even though that would be considered an aspect of healing, which would be ordinarily prohibited on Shabbos. We'll do a bunch of Rashi, so let's keep a finger on Rashi. Second line down in the narrow lines of Rashi, Korach ala gemi. So bishas avoda, at the time that this person is doing the avoda, Shiganaihu, because it would not be appropriate. It would be disrespectful. Shatir sham makato, that his injury should be seen there. Va'afagav de gemi masi maka, that even though this wound is fixing an injury, the kol davar sheyesh bo mishum refuah, and anything that is considered an effort at healing, usser, is prohibited, mishum shvus, because of a rabbinic decree that you should not do certain actions on Shabbos, gzeira shema yischok simanim, just in case you're going to end up grinding herbs. And so as a result, that would be prohibited. So Hani Mili bin Medina, that only applies out in the sticks, not in the Beit HaMikdash. Aval b'mikdash lo gazra mishum shvus. We have a general principle that the concept of shvus, where the rabbis say sheva al tase, don't do certain actions, that doesn't apply in the Beis Hamikdash. And so this is a shvus, doesn't apply in the Beis Hamikdash. And so as a result, in the Beis Hamikdash, we're going to say that he can put this reed grass wrapping on him. Avaloba Medina, but he can't do it elsewhere. However, if, on the other hand, he's actually using it in order to try and express blood, well, then that's going to be a problem. Then kan v'kan usher. And Rashi says, now we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 lines down in the Rashi, in the narrow lines. Kan v'kan usher dechaburahu, because you're making a wound. The iser del raisa, and that's biblically prohibited. So you can't do something that's biblically prohibited, even though it might be helpful in order to address the makkah in the Beit Hamikdash, and we don't want the makkah in the Beit Hamikdash to be seen. But we're going to say no, that's still too much, going to be a problem. Again, that was when it was on one's finger, so it wasn't necessarily under any particular garments. So Rabbi Yehuda braid the Rabbi Yachia lo shanu elagmi, that the permission is only in connection with something that's sort of like an informal, it's not a formal garment. About siltzul katan, but even if it were a small belt, then havi yatir begadim. Then, and even though it's obviously not on his, not underneath any of his other garments, because that would be a different issue. Here we're dealing with it's going to be an extra garment, and that's exactly the relevance to our discussion because we're talking about whether or not you can wear extra garments or too few garments, and we learned yesterday that mechusar begadim covers both. That you can also have a problem by wearing too many garments. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. He says, Lo amru yitter begadim, el b'mekom begadim. That the only time you have a concern about wearing too many garments is if the garment that you're wearing is in the place where you wear garments. Aval shalom makom begadim. But if it's not on a place where you wear garments, like your hands or your fingers, so lo havi yitur, then we're not going to consider it an extra garment. Well, okay, you want to tell me that it's not an extra garment. Fine. But it's on the person's hand. The hands are doing the avoda. The avoda needs to be done directly, as Rashi says, v'tepuk le mishum de. So now we're 12 lines down in the narrow lines. Bein yado la'avoda. It's going to end up being a separation between his hand and the actual service that he's doing. V'asar, and it will be prohibited. De be'inan v'lakacha kohen, and because we need for the pasuk says v'lakacha kohen, the kohen's going to take, meaning that there's nothing separating. Shetehei kabbalah ba'atzmo. Shel Cohen, that the Cohen himself is taking. So how can this be permitted? Rabbi Yochanan, by Rabbi Yochanan, how can Rabbi Yochanan say that even if it's on your hand, it's permitted? Isn't it going to serve as a chatzitza? So the Gemara answers what I think is a quite reasonable answer. Bismol, we're talking about with the left hand, and we're going to assume that the Kohen is a righty or has an obligation to use the right hand, as we say, have seen generally over the last few days that the Kohanim need to use their right hand. Inami shalom makom avoda, or you could say it's like on the back of the hand, and therefore it's not in a place where it would actually cause separation between the Kohen and the service. So
Why don't we consider the coin a balmum here?
because it's not permanent. The balmum
It's
is
only permanent?
well, the balmum there are only certain kinds of injuries, and a cut is not considered one of those injuries. Often, I'm not sure that it's every case, but often the situations that are problematic are specifically situations that are more permanent. And so, I mean, a broken
You have
leg.
a broken bone, it will heal, but it may not be heal exactly as it was before.
Exactly, exactly,
So is that a
exactly. Now,
balmum?
a broken leg, I believe, a broken bone is a balmum, and it actually, even after it heals, it's still considered a balmum. So the point is that yes, I'm not sure whether there are any balmum that can heal, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So don't quote me on that. But the bottom line is this is not. It's an excellent question, but it's not considered a blemish that would cause the Kohen to be usher. Upligi de Rava.
When we say
And
Matsora, the Matzah Cohen is Matsora, he heals, right? He's only about, he cannot serve, right? While he was Matsora, right?
yes, but that's because he's tame. So about a mitzvah is considered essentially a kind of tuma. So it's a good question. I'm not 100% sure that there isn't any kind of balmum that can heal, but the bottom line is that this is not considered that. So upligi Rav de Rava, and Rabbi Yochanan argues with Rava. De Amar Rava. Amar Rav Chisda b'makom begadim. That Rava said in the name of Rav Chisda that in the place where you're wearing garments, afilu nema achas chotzetzes, even one string, one thread is going to serve as a chitzitza. Shalom b'makom begadim. But if it's not in the place of begadim, well then shalosh al shalosh chotzitzos. You need 3 fingers by 3 fingers to create a chatzitza. Pachos mikan eno chotzitzos. But less than that, it's not going to create a chatzitza. Now, how does this disagree? So the issue is that Rabbi Yochanan. So let's take a look at Rashi. Well, you know what? Let's continue on because the Gemara is going to help us. Ad Rabbi Yochanan vade pligi. When it comes to Rabbi Yochanan, Rava is definitely disagreeing. Take a look in Rashi. So now we were 12 lines down in Rashi. Now we're 16 lines down in Rashi. No, no, we were. We're 12 lines down, so now it's 17 lines down. Daha Amar, because what did Rabbi Yochanan say? Shelo b'makom begadim. If it's not in the place of the garments, lo havi yes or begadim. It would never be considered an extra garment. Vafilu shalosh al shalosh b'mashma, implying even if it's 3 by 3, three finger widths by 3 finger widths. So the point is that Rava certainly argues with Rabbi Yochanan. Ad Rabbi Yehuda braid the Rabbi Chia milema depligi, but does he also disagree with Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia? Because what did he say? He said that reed grass was okay, but a small belt is forbidden. So what was the situation? Because it would be considered an extra garment. So is the fact that it's again, this is a on his hand, so it's not in the place of a garment. So as a result, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you need to have that even a small belt is going to be prohibited, implying that even something that's maybe even less than 3 fingers by 3 fingers, whereas Rava was saying that it needs to be at least 3 fingers by 3 fingers. So doesn't that actually disagree? No, not necessarily. Shiny tziltzul katan dechashiv. We can argue that actually Rabbi Yehuda would say if you just use anything, if it's 3 by 3, it's problematic. But if you use something as significant as the small belt, so then that is going to be even smaller than 3 by 3. But really, Rava would agree to that as well. So Lishna Achrina, another way that this whole discussion could have happened or happened according to others, Amrile, it was as follows. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Brei the Rabbi Chia. Now we're going to slightly change Rabbi Yochanan's viewpoint, but the other viewpoints we're going to have are consistent. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Brei the Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Chia, said, Lo shanu elegami. We're only talking about the reed grass. That's why that is going to be permitted. Aval tziltzul katan chotzeitz. But if you had some kind of small belt on your finger, that would actually constitute a chatzitza, and it would be a problem. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, no. Lo amru chatzitza b'pachos mishalosh b'shalosh. You have to be at least 3 fingers by 3 fingers. And so as a result, clearly Rabbi Yochanan is disagreeing with Rabbi Chia. He says that you have to have 3 fingers by 3 fingers. Ella b'makom begadim, unless they're worn unless it's where have garments. So if you have garments, so then even less than 3 by 3. Aval shalo b'makom begadim, shalosh al shalosh chotzitzos. You need 3 by 3 to constitute a chatzitza. Palchos mikan ain't a chatzitzas. But anything less than that is not going to be considered a chatzitza. V'hainu de Rava Amar of Chisda. And that sounds very similar to what Rava said in the name of Chisda. Rav Chisda. So lema pligi ad Rabbi Yehuda brei de Rabbi Chia. So do we have to say, and Rashi tells us this is talking about Rava, that Rava disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia? Because clearly Rabbi Yochanan disagrees, because that was the discussion. Rabbi Yochanan didn't need to say anything if he agreed with Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, because they were the ones who were having the conversation. But Rabbi Yochanan clearly disagrees. And the disagreement is that he would say that a small belt is okay because it's less than 3 fingers by 3 fingers. But
Anywhere?
not on not no, only when you're not in where your garments are, meaning not where your other clothing is. Again, that the updated view of Rabbi Yochanan is it's got to be not where your clothing is. So shiny, no, we don't need to say that Rava would also disagree with Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia. Shiny tziltzul katan dechashiv. No, because again, it could be that a small belt is considered significant, even though it is less than 3 by 3, because it is, it is an object in and of itself. It has its own independent significance because it's called a small belt. And so as a result, therefore, it would be considered problematic according to Rava, and therefore Rava could agree with Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia. And so again, in the second teaching, the only disagreement between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, and Rabbi Yochanan is about the tziltzul katan, the small belt, where Rabbi Yehuda would say that it's problematic, and Rabbi Yochanan would say that it's not. Rabbi
That's in a
Yochanan
place without garments, right?
been in place without garments. Correct, correct. And everybody would agree that in a place with garments, it would be that anything would be problematic. Well, Rabbi Yochanan, my yigami lishmu'inan tziltzul katan. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that a tziltzul katan is permitted in the Beit Hamikdash, because it would not cause, it would not be a chatzitza. So why didn't the Mishnah in Eruvin on Kuf Gimel Amud Bet in Eruvin, why didn't it say that the halacha is that a small belt is permitted? Why did he? Because after all, Rabbi Yochanan says that when it comes to the small belt, it would be permitted. No, milsa agav orche kamash milan degami mase. No, the point is that it's teaching us something else, that the gami, that the reed grass bandage actually has some curative effect. And that's why you can't put it on. When it comes to a band-aid, if you need a band-aid on Shabbos, you can put it on because the band-aid itself is not going to be curative. It's just the bandage. And so as a result, it's only specifically that the fact that the reed grass has some curative effect. That's why you can't apply it on the wound, and that's why, and nonetheless, it's going to be permitted in the Beit Hamikdash. Okay, so all right. So now we're going to have a series of 8 questions. Only the last of them. Now, in the end, what we'll end up is sometimes we'll have an answer to an intermediate question, but we'll end up with 8 questions. Only the last of them is going to really get discussed. 7 of them are, 6 of them, I think, are from Rava, and then we'll have 2 final ones, one from Mar Bar Ravashi and one from Rabbi Zera. So let's take a look. So by Rava, Rava asks the following question: Nichnasa lo ruach bevigdo mahu. What happens if the air blows into the garment and so it separates from the person's body? Al bisaro be'inan, do we need it to be tight fitting the garment and so it's literally on his flesh? V'haleka, and this is not. Odilma derek levisha bakach, or do we say that you can wear it the way people wear clothing? So that question does not get answered. Kina mahu shetachotz. What about a lice? Lice. Does a single louse constitute a chatzitza? So mesa lo tibailach. If it's dead, of course it does. That certainly would cause a separation. Chayamai. But though I'm asking really about a live louse. Mi amrin and kaven to asav asl. Do we say that because it comes and goes, meaning it travels along and it's going to, be on that part of your body, but then it's going to be on some other part of your body and it won't be a problem. It won't be a chatzitza. So revisahi below chaytza. Do we say that it's like a normal growth and it doesn't actually constitute a chatzitza? Oh, Dilma kaven to kapit alei chaytza. Or do we say no, because you don't really want it there, it's going to be a chatzitza? Again, we don't answer that question. Afar mahu shiyachutz. What about dirt? So again, would we say that dirt constitutes a problem? Afar vadachai. No, of course dirt is going to be a problem if it's real dirt. Ela avak afar mahu. What about dust? No, dust is the question, and so we leave it as a question with respect to dust. Beis hashechi mahu shiyachutz. I know that's what I told you. I don't know that I said that there wasn't going to be any menu today. Yeah, I don't know. I must have been mistaken. Maybe it's a different day. All right. Sorry, Mark. All right. I'll see you later. So Beis hashachim mahu shiyachutz. So what about your armpit? Does the fact that does al basaro be'inan, do we need all of the your flesh to be covered, and here the armpit is supposed to be covered. And so, in most of our sleeves, today, it's covered so that your skin isn't touching skin. But if you imagine sort of like a tank top, where the skin of your arm could end up touching the skin of your body, so then is that not going to be sufficient because you need al bisaro be'inan v'haleka? It's not on all of your flesh. Odilma derech levisha bakach, or do we say no? Again, it's just the way you wear it. So again, it seems we don't answer that question, and we go on to the fifth question. Hichnes yado l'tocheku mahu. What if you stick your hand in your jacket, in the clothing? So gufo michayetz olo. Do we say that your own body can serve as a chatzitza? Meaning, on the prior question, the body wasn't serving as a chatzitza. The body just wasn't covered because it was touching other body parts. But here, it's not just not, it's more, it's less bad than not being covered because it is covered, but you're now sticking another body part in between. So is that going to be okay? Again, we don't answer. So, and the bottom line is because we don't answer, we would be strict in every one of these cases. So, nema mao tashatachutz. So, do we say, what about a regular thread? Do we say that causes a problem? One second. Name of So we already saw a discussion about when it's something's under a garment that even a thread is going to be a problem. Elanema meduldelas mahu. What if it's a hanging thread? Meaning the point is that it's part of the garment, and there's just an extra thread. Do you need to be very careful to make sure that all those hanging threads are removed? And again, we don't answer. And so again, the bottom line is that if for big day kahuna, we would say we should be strict with respect to all of these. We would want it to be close fitting. We would want it to, you not have any lice. You need to make sure that you don't have any dust on you. So you got to wash yourself before you get dressed. You need to make sure that there's no it's tight fitting under your armpits. You need to make sure that you don't put your hand into your garment, as because that could be a problem. And you need to make sure that there aren't any hanging threads. So by Mar Barav
But there
Ashi,
are hanging threads in the Arba Kanfot with the tzitzit, right? Aren't those
Yes,
hanging
that
threads?
that that is true. You would have to, first of all, I don't think that they were. I don't know whether any of their garments had tzitzis on them.
Well, if they had four-cornered garment, wouldn't they have to have a tzitzit?
Right. Well, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. I don't remember whether there are tzitzis on any of the Big Day Kahuna. I don't think that there are tzitzis on any of the Big Day Kahuna. Um, I mean, there are the fringes that hang down, but those are part of the garment. The issue is that if you have a seam or a thread gets pulled loose in the garment, that's going to be the problem. Remember, even if you did have tzitzis, those are literally hanging down. The situation would be if the tzitzis came and got folded up within the garment, would that be a problem? But again, that doesn't actually apply to Big Day Kahuna because I don't think they have tzitzis hanging down. But they do have the Kohen Gadol, of course, has the bells and the pomegranates, and so those threads that are hanging down that are holding if they got folded up, that would be a problem. So boy marbar of Ashi yotza saro bivigdo mahu. What happens if the Kohen's hair got too long and it grew underneath the clothing? Saro kagufo dami. Do we say that his hair is like his body? Olav kagufo dami, or do we say not? Now, in the end, of course, Kohanim cut their hair regularly, and it's very short, so this is unlikely to happen in practice. But the bottom line is that we would want to be careful. By Rabbi Zera similarly. So again, we didn't answer question number 7 either, but we're going to answer this next one. Rabbi Zera asked, "Tfillin mahu shiachutza." What do we say about tfillin? Do they constitute a chatzitza or not? So aliba deman aliba deman de amar laila lavs man tefillin who, according to the opinion that says that nighttime is not a time for wearing tefillin lo tibailach. So then it's not going to be a question. Everybody's going to agree that it's going to be a chatzitza. Kevin delayli chatzah, since it's a chatzitza at night, yomanami chatzitza, it's going to be a chatzitza during the daytime. Kiti by loch. So according to whom can I ask this question? Lamanda Amr Laila's man tefillin. According to the opinion that says nighttime is a time for tefillin. So what do we say in that situation? Mitzvah de gufei chayitz. Do we say that it's because it's a mitzvah and you're wearing it on your body, and therefore it's considered a chatzitza, lo chayitz, or do we say no because it's not it's not an improper additional garment? So il galgal melsa umata lekame de Rabbi Ami. So the question got circulated around, and it eventually came before Rabbi Ami. Amar le, he said, Talmud Aruch Hu Biyadenu. It's an explicit teaching that we have tefillin chotzitzos. Tefillin are a chatzitza. It would be a problem. Meisvei, 1 second. I got a question for you, Rabbi Ami, because we have the following brisa, Kohanim ba'avodasan, that when Kohanim are doing their service, Uleviim b'duchanan, and when the Leviim are doing their service of singing in the Beis Hamikdash, Yisrael b'ma'amadan, and Yisrael when they're doing their service in the Beis Hamikdash. Namely, what was their service in the Beis Hamikdash? Well, there were 24 groups of Israelites, and every week, different representatives would go and stand in the Beis Hamikdash because you needed to have representatives of the children of Israel standing there in order to offer the communal sacrifices, and they would essentially be the representatives of all of Israel. So all three of these people, Peturin min hatfila umin hatfilin, they are exempt from saying the Amidah and for wearing tefillin. So what's the implication of being exempt? It's that you could wear it, you just don't have to. My lav iman nichan einan chotzitzos. Doesn't this imply that if they do wear it, it doesn't serve as a chatzitza for the Kohen? No, lo iman nichan chotzitzos. When it comes to the Kohen, if they did wear it, it would constitute a chatzitza. Well, ihachi peturin. Why are you telling me that it's pater? Asurin mi baile. It should have said asur. No, Kavan to Ika Levim Yisrael. No, we're talking about the Levim in Yisrael also. And for the Levim and the Yisraelim, the lo mitnu lo aser. It's not going to be aser. Mishum hachitana peturin. So that's why it said peturin. So although peturin only applies to the Levim and Yisraelim, for the Kohanim, it would actually be asurin. 1 second, though, we've got another question to Rabbi Ami. So again, Rabbi Ami says that tefillin is definitely a chatzitza v'hatanya im henichan einan chotetzos. 1 second. If the Kohen put on tefillin, we have a brisa that specifically says that they aren't a chatzitza. No, lo kasha hadiyad hadarosh. When we have the hand tefillin would constitute a chatzitza. It's essentially another garment, and it would be on your hands and potentially serve as a chatzitza. That would be a problem for you're doing the service. And we hear it's got to be referring to an extra garment, because if it was just or it's because it's underneath the garment, because obviously tefillin is worn on the weak hand, on your left hand. So we're not answering, oh, it's on the left hand, so therefore it's not going to be a chatzitza. So clearly it's talking about either it's underneath the garment itself and therefore it serves as a chatzitza, or it's considered an extra garment and therefore serves as a problem from that perspective. But hadarosh, but when it comes to the tefillin of the Rosh, that's where the brisa says that it's permitted. And so when Rabbi Ami says that it's a chatzitza, he's referring to the tefillin shel yad. So Maishna diyad diksiv yilbash al bisaro. Well, why is the yad going to be a problem? It's because it says that he's got to wear the garments on his flesh. You can't have anything separated. Derosh namiksiv v'samta hamitznefes al rosho.
Oh,
One
that's what I
second
was
though,
thinking of.
doesn't the turban that's on the person's head
Right.
also have to not have any kind of chatzitza? So how can you wear the shel rosh? Won't that serve as a chatzitza? And so clearly, actually, so I had said that maybe the yad was an extra garment. Here, it's clearly saying that it's a chatzitza because it's underneath one of the other garments. So no, it's not necessarily going to be a problem on the rosh because Tana, we have a brisa. Saro haya nira bein sitz limits nefes. There was some hair of the Kohen Gadol that could be seen between the tzitz and the mitznefes, between the tzitz that said Kodesh LaHashem, that's going to be on the forehead, and the mitznefes, that's the turban that's on the top of the head, and there was room between them. And now we turn to Yutedim Abet, Shisham Menichin Tefillin, that would be exactly where you'd put the tefillin. And so clearly, as Rashi says, Hilkach Leika Chatzitza, there's not going to be any kind of chatzitza there. Okay.
The sarota is not considered chatzitza? We didn't
Well,
really answer
no,
that question.
it's a good question about whether hair that is too long constitutes a chatzitza. In general, there's a debate among Rishonim and Achronim about what constitutes too long and whether it's going to be problematic. Basically, certainly if you double your hair over and so you have like a big fluff of hair and when you're putting your tefillin on, there are multiple layers of the same hair, that's almost certainly going to be a problem. But if your hair is flat, even if you have a lot of it, if it's all going to be going in one direction, and then and so as a result, you've got it on the hair, on the head, almost everybody says that that's going to be okay, irrespective of how long that hair is. So as long as the hair is all sort of going in one direction, you should be fine. If you have like the tuft of hair that some people have, I think people call it the broccoli or something. In any event, that tuft of hair you have to be careful with to make sure that it's all going in one direction to avoid any issue of chatzitza. Okay, we went a little out of order in our Gemara because we discussed, we talked about Mechusar Kippurim beforehand, but we ended up discussing Mechusar Begadim before Mechusar Kippurim. But here we get to finally the Mechusar Kippurim, which was listed in our Mishnah before Mechusar Begadim. But in any event, so one who lacks atonement. Again, this refers to somebody who goes to the mikvah and becomes tahor at night, but the next day, either because they are a zav, or because they are a mitzorah, or because they are a nazir, they have to offer a korban the next day. And so, if they lack atonement that next day, they're still going to be prohibited from receiving the blood. That's what we're talking about in our Mishnah. So, Minalan, how do I know that that's the case? Rav Huna Amar Kra v'chiper aleha hakohen v'tehera tehera miklal shehi tameya. So it says this is a pasuk dealing with the offerings of a woman, and although obviously in our Mishnah we're talking about men, the source for this, that fact that mechusar kapara is on some level considered tamei, is in connection with a new mother. A new mother, after she becomes tahor, she is then able to bring the bird's sacrifice for having had the children. And when she brings that sacrifice, it says the Kohen shall atone for her and she shall become purified. Even though she had gone to the mikveh the day before and it had come nighttime, and so as a result, from that perspective, she's really should be totally tahor, and all that she's missing is mechusar kapara. She's missing the atonement associated with bringing the sacrifice. But we say that notwithstanding that, that's going to be okay. That's going to indicate that she's still considered tamei, and just like a woman whose mechusar kapara is still considered some level of tuma, so too in connection with every other mechusar kapara, they're considered some level of tuma, and therefore they're not allowed to receive the blood. All right. V'shelo ruchotz li'adayim v'raglayim. So that was the next item, I believe. Let me just double check back to our Mishnah at the opening of the second parak, where we said after Yeah, after Mechusar Kippurim, we then had Mechusar Begadim, and then we had Shalo Rachotz Yadayim V'Raglayim. So now we're back in order. So what happens if you didn't wash your hands or your feet? Well, then Asya Chulka Chulka Min Mechusar Begadim. Well, we have the Gzeira Shava that we saw. I think on Wednesday we saw this Gzeira Shava. We may have seen it also yesterday. The point is we have a Gzeira Shava of Chukka Chukka, and so as a result, that is going to be the basis for, I think actually maybe yesterday and not 2 days ago, we saw this Gzeira Shava, and that we're going to learn from Mechusar Begadim to a case of not washing, because both of them have the word chok in connection with it. So now the Gemara cites a related brisa
I think
that
we were learning from
discusses.
that to wine.
Sorry, yes,
We were
exactly.
learning it
So,
from
correct,
Mechusa
correct.
Begadim,
It's
Mechusa
a
Begadim to
three-way.
Yayin.
Exactly. It's a three-way Gzereshava with wine as well. Correct. So Tan Rabbanan, Kohen Gadol Shalo Tavel V'Shalo Kidesh. If you have a Kohen Gadol, this is talking about service on Yom Kippur, and he didn't go into the mikveh, and he didn't do the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, the washing of hands and feet, and that's why we're bringing this here. Bain beged leveged, whether it was between one garment and another, meaning when the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur would change between the garments he would wear to go into the Kodesh HaKodashim, or the golden garments that he would do the service outside of the Kodesh HaKodashim, ubein avoda avoda, and when it was between services and one service and the next, v'avad, and he did the service again without going to the mikveh and without washing his hands and feet, avodato kshera, his service is considered kosher. Ve'echad kohen gadol, ve'echad kohen hedyo, but that's between services. But when it comes to whether it's a regular Kohen or a Kohen Gadol, Ishalo Kiddush Yadav Raglav Shacharis, if first thing in the morning he didn't wash his hands, Va'avad, and he didn't wash his hands and feet, and he did the service, Avodah Psula, then whether he's a Kohen Gadol or a regular Kohen, then that service is going to be invalid, because you need to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. Amar le Rav Asi le Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Asi said to Rabbi Yochanan, Michti, let's take a look. Chamesh tfilos v'asara kiddushin de'oraisa. There are when the Kohen Gadol does his services on Yom Kippur, he's going to go into the mikveh 5 times, and before he gets undressed to go into the mikveh, he's going to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And I'm sorry, before he goes into the mikveh, he's going to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And after he gets out of the mikveh, he's going to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And so you end up with 10 times Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim and 5 times full immersion. So v'chuka ksiv b'hu, and it says that it's a chok. La'akvo, doesn't that indicate that it's all essential? So how can we say in this brisa that the Kohen Gadol can get away without doing all of these Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim and all of these immersions? It seems like they should be absolutely required. So Amar Le, Rabbi Yochanan responds, Amar Kra Ulveisham, that the Torah says that he's going to put on the clothing levisha ma'akevet. What is it in the chukah statement that is obligatory? It is the wearing of the garments. V'ein davar acher ma'akev, but not anything else is going to be ma'akev. Sahavu panav. So Rav Asi's, was like, okay, that's a good answer. So Amar Le, and then Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "Na vav a'ufta kisvilach." I wrote a vav on a wooden log that's going to, you can't tell it's a vav after you write it down, because it's going to grow in all different directions, and you can't tell that it's a straight line anymore. Ihachi ditzafranami, because if what I said was actually true, even in the morning, you would end up saying that it shouldn't be a good, that you shouldn't absolutely need to do the washing of your hands and feet. And so, but we know that the washing of the hands and feet in the morning is obligatory. So as a result, Amar Chizkiah offers a different answer. Amar Kra, the Torah says, V'haisa lahem chok olam lo ulzaro l'dorasam, that it says that it's going to be for him and his descendants a permanent requirement, and this pasuk is talking about washing yadayim v'raglayim. So davar hamakev bizarro, just as it's required for his offspring, Ma'akev Bo, is going to also be required for the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, that the first time he washes his hands and feet, if he doesn't do it, it's going to undo all of his work. So davar she'eno ma'akev bizaro, eno ma'akev bo. And something that is not going to be essential for the offspring, namely doing Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim and going to the mikvah between services, so then that is not going to be necessary either for a Kohen Gadol. So Rabbi Yochanan son Amar Mehacha. Rabbi Yonasan offers an alternative source. V'rachatzu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron uvanav. A different pasuk that references Aaron and his sons washing their hands from the kior. And so again, it indicates davar hama'akev bivanav ma'akev bo. Same lesson, just the different pasuk. The one pasuk was Shmos Lamed pasuk Kaf Aleph, and the other is Shmos Mem pasuk Lamed Aleph. Pasuk Lamed Aleph. Again,
Why do we say
La-
that this is davar she'eno ma'akev b'zaro? His children will become Kohanim Gedolim also.
No. The ma'akev piece is for the children. That for the the lesson is the following. The question that we have is, how do we know that the first washing of Yadayim and Raglayim by the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur is absolutely required?
Right.
Now we know that the first Yadayim and Raglayim of other Kohanim on other days, that's required, because that's what the Torah says. You have to wash your hands and feet before you do the service. So, but how do I know that that also applies to the Kohen Gadol? I could know that it applies to a regular Kohen, but how do I know that it applies to a Kohen Gadol? And so we're going to say, Davar hama'akev bivanav ma'akev bo. That's something that is ma'akev on Aaron's sons, on non-Kohanei Gedolim. So that is also going to be ma'akev on the Kohen Gadol. And davar she'eno ma'akev bivanav, ain ma'akev bo. And something that's not ma'akev on the sons is not going to be ma'akev on the Kohen Gadol. And so that's why, so we have these two different potential lessons of exactly the same thing. So now we need to
So
understand.
why do we say it's not ma'akev on the banav?
What?
Why are we saying?
Because the banav, if they were to change their garments in the middle of the day, or if they go from one service to another service in the middle of the day, they do not need to wash their hands and feet again.
But
So
how do
it's
we know
not.
that? What's the source?
What's the source for that?
For the
Well,
banim.
we're going to see a little bit more clearly. We're going to see that maybe that helps us understand why we're going to bring the next brisa. But before we get to that brisa, we have to understand why it is that Chizkiah and Rabbi Yonatan are disagreeing and quite quoting different psukim. But I think that can explain why it is that we're going to bring the next brisa. So let's take a look. So give me another minute and we'll see. So Rabbi Yonatan, my time lo amr mid Chizkiah. Why didn't Rabbi Yonatan agree with Rabbi Chizkiah? Amar lach, he would tell you, Hahu l'dorot hu diksiv. That pasuk in Shmot Lamed is not applying to Moshe, Aaron, and his children. So as a result, it's not going to be a good lesson for them. It's really just about future generations. The idach, my time alo amar mehai. And so, all right, so why doesn't Chizkiah, who says, why doesn't he agree to Moshe v'Aaron ubanav? Because he can't use that pasuk, because he needs that pasuk l'Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina. He needs it for what Rabbi Yossi the son of Rabbi Chanina taught us. Dam Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina, kol kiyor she'ein bo kidei l'kadosh arba kohanim mimenu ein mekadshin bo. That you need to be able to have 4 people be able to use the kior at the same time. Shneimar v'rachatzu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron ubanav. Well, 1 Moshe, Aaron 2, banav is plural. That's 2 more. That's 4. So you need to have 4 people be able to have it at the same time. So, Tana Rabbanan. So the rabbis now teach a brisa. So we see why each of Rabbi Yonatan and Chizkiah don't agree with each other. But now we quote another brisa that I think may address exactly the point of how do we know when a Kohen, regular Kohen, needs to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. Ketzad mitzvahs Kiddush. How is that Kiddush? Meaning, and therefore, how could it be that when we say that the other washing and mikvah going of the Yom on Yom Kippur of the Kohen Gadol, how can we say that just as it's not essential for a regular Kohen, it's also going to be not essential for the Kohen Gadol? So Tan Rabban, Ketzah mitzvahs Kiddush. How do we do this mitzvah of Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, Meniach Yado Hayamanit Al Gabei Raglo Hayamanit. You put your right hand over your right foot, the yado, and then you wash your hands and foot. The yado hasmalit al gabe raglo hasmalit, and then you put your left hand over your left foot and you wash them. Umikadesh, and you do that, and you sanctify them. Okay, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yossi disagrees. He says, "Maniach shtei yadav zu al gav zu, al gabi shtei raglav zu al gabi zu." No, you stand on one foot. You put one foot on top of the other foot. You put one hand on top of the other hand, and you bend down, and you get that nice one big pile, and then umakadesh, and you wash them all together at that one time. Amrulo, the rabbis, the Tanakama said back to him, Hiflagta, 1 second. How can that's how it's an exaggeration? How anybody could do that? Now, obviously, if you've seen people do,
You need someone else do it for him. He can't do that himself.
Well, I think the point is that the water itself is flowing.
Oh, and so he stands under a faucet,
Exactly.
basically.
He's standing under a faucet. And so, but the point is that how does he balance is the real question that's being asked here, is how can he possibly balance? Ef Sharla Soskane. It's impossible to do that without falling. And so Shaper Ka'amrele. So the rabbis, answered him well. So that's the end of the brisa. So what would Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, say? So Amar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef answers, V'chaveru misayo. No, his friends would help him. They would give him support so that he doesn't fall. Well, my benai, so what's the difference between the Tanakama and and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda? So Amar Abaye, Amida minatzad ika banayo. The question is whether it's considered standing if somebody is giving you some side support. If you're getting side support, is that considered standing? So Amarle Rav Sama, Breda Rav Ashi Ravina, Vilesev Mesa Vilkadish. Why not just let him sit down? So Amarkra Lishares, to serve. The shirus me'umadhu, and any kind of service needs to be standing. So as a result, we have to say that this too is standing. Okay, so and so therefore that we've got that. So actually, that's not the brisa that I was referring to. The next brisa I think covers the point that touches on Ken's question about how come a regular Kohen doesn't need to wash his hands in the middle of the day. So Tana Rabbanan Kiddush Yadav V'Raglav Vayom Ein Tzarech L'Kadosh B'Layla. The Tanakama says you don't need to wash it at night. Tzarech L'Kadosh Bayom. I'm sorry. Excuse me, I read that wrong. Balayla tzarech l'kadosh bayom. That if in fact you washed your hands and feet during the daytime and you're continuing to do work at night, you do not need to wash them again. If you wash them at night and you're continuing in the daytime, then you do need to wash them again. Divrei Rebbe, that's what Rebbe says. Shahaya Rebbe Omer, because Rebbe would say, Lina, a sort of resting, the passing of the night, Mo Eles B'Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, it sort of interrupts and is effective at interrupting the washing of hands and feet. So you need to do it again. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, no, the passing of the night doesn't matter. The point is that as long as you wash your hands and feet and you're continuing to do service in the Beis Hamikdash, you don't need to do it again. And that's the point that I was trying to get to highlight the fact that a regular Kohen, if he's switching between different services, services doesn't need to wash his hands and feet again. So Tanya Edith, we have another brisa. Haya omedu makriv al gabi mizbeach kol halayla. If you were standing the entire night and offering putting the emurim on the base on the mizbeach, and laora ton kiddush yadayim v'raglayim divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says that when you get up, when the dawn comes, you need to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim again. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Omer Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, says, Kevan Shekidash Yada V'Ragla Mitchila Avoda, since he did it before his Avoda started, Afilu Mikan Ba'ad Asara Yamim Einan Einot Sarach Lakadosh. Even if he continues to serve for 10 days, and I think this is meant as an exaggeration, not to be taken literally, the point is that there is no limit, no formal limit for how long the washing of hands and feet can last. It can last for a long time. Utsricha. And we need to tell both arguments. Both the generic argument of whether night is a problem, whether the dawn is a problem, and the service situation. Because De'iyashmin and Kamaisa, if I just had the first case that talked about dawn being a problem, Bahikama Rebbe. Maybe it's only in that case that Rebbe says that dawn is going to be a problem. Because there's a pause between doing one service and doing another service. Aval Baha, but in the second brisa, Delo Pasuk, where there didn't have to be any kind of interruption, Ema Modile Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. Maybe Rebbe would agree with Rebbe Elazar, the son of Rebbe Shimon, and say that dawn does not interrupt if you're still doing the same service. And if we only had the second machlokas that tells us about the service, that even if you served all night, you're going to have to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim again. No, Bahakam or Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Yishimon. That's the situation where Rebbe Elazar, the son of Rebbe Shimon, would allow you not to have to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim again. Alva Baha, but if in fact you were not only was it changing between nighttime and daytime, but you were also changing between one service and another service, Ema Modu Leila Rebbe, maybe he would agree with Rebbe that you would need to do a new Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. Therefore, it's Sricha. Therefore, it's needed. So the bottom line is this is what I was referring to, that this highlights the fact that you don't need to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim between multiple services if you're a regular Kohen. And so as a result, once we've connected regular Kohanim to the Kohen Gadol, just like the regular Kohanim need to do it before their first service of the day, or the very first service if they haven't done, if they're not continuing to do services. So as a result, so that's why the Kohen Gadol needs the first service on Yom Kippur to make sure that he's done Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And on the other hand, when it comes to all the other Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim during the daytime, that just as the regular Kohanim don't need to do it, so too the regular the Kohen Gadol doesn't need to do it either. Okay.
But there's a machloket here between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar.
Yes, but that
assumes
they all agree that if you are not doing services and now it's the next day, you are definitely going to if you effectively stop your service, if there's a hefsek, then everybody agrees that it's going to be a problem when you go from nighttime to daytime.
Well, what's the hefsek? At nighttime they're doing it. They wash their hands at nighttime, right? So
correct.
It says they're offering.
But the Kohen Gadol Kohen Gadol,
they're offering all night long. Kol halayla.
Yes,
So
you're right.
Where's the hefsek? They're saying dawn is a hefsek.
That's a situation where you don't have to. You wouldn't have to wash in the.
No, it says you do.
No, not according to Rebbe Elazar,
But according to Rebbe,
yes, but you just said there's a machlokes.
Exactly, there's a machloket. So according to one view, kol halayla leora ta'un kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. They have to do it again, according to the first opinion.
Yes, according to the first opinion, 100%. So according to the first opinion, it's very clear why the Kohen Gadol would have to do it on Yom Kippur, because he hasn't done service all night. And so as a result, and doesn't make a difference, even if he did do service all night, he would have to do it. He would have to wash Yadayim V'Raglayim in the morning, because though we just learned that a Kohen Gadol is like a regular Kohen in connection with washing the first time, Yadayim V'Raglayim.
So
and
even
so, of
if he's
course,
doing
according
it
to
all
Rebbe,
night
he
long,
has to do it. Let me finish, please. So
I thought you
the
did.
only time that you have a question is according to Rebbe Elazar, the son of Rebbe Shimon. According to Rebbe Elazar, the son of Rebbe Shimon, a regular Kohen who washes at night would not have to wash in the morning. So maybe you could ask, well, why then does the Kohen Gadol need to wash in the morning? And the answer is he doesn't do service all night. He's not going to wash his Yadayim V'Raglayim at night. And therefore, because he didn't do washing Yadayim V'Raglayim at night, he's going to need to do Yadayim V'Raglayim the first thing when he does it in the morning.
So who does the service all night?
Well, on Erev Yom Kippur, on the night of Yom Kippur, I don't think anybody's doing services all night.
Oh, so this is only Lagabe Yom Kippur?
This brisa is general. The statement that we learned earlier of the connection of the hekesh between the Kohen Gadol that we can learn the Kohen Gadol from a regular Kohen, that only applies on Yom Kippur.
Oh, so this, in general, this machloket still stands, and
This machlokas is a broader machlokas,
Right.
100%,
so
100%.
so if it's called when we say
I was
kol
answering your
halayla,
question from before.
Right.
You were asking, how do I know that a regular Kohen, when he goes from one service to another service, doesn't need to do another Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim? And this brisa, whether you're going according to Rebbe, whether you're going to Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, both of them would agree that if you're just going, a regular Kohen is going from one service to the next, and it's not going from nighttime to daytime, everybody agrees that it's going to be sufficient, that you don't need to do a new Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim.
Okay, that's in the daytime, but during the nighttime, according to one, they would have to do it because the daytime, just dawn itself, is considered a hefsek.
Within the night, you wouldn't have to do it. It's only when it's the transition from night to day that we have the machlokas.
Right, exactly. That's just
Okay.
according to one opinion.
That's fine, but that's not relevant on Yom Kippur. So that's why I'm not my point is to answer your question in connection to
So,
Yom
but is
Kippur.
there? I'm not seeing. Okay, but there is a machloket here, and according to everyone, it's daytime. But what's the makor for this? Where was there? Is there a pasuk that says that they don't have to? They don't have to. It's not ma'akev during the daytime.
That is exactly the next piece of the Gemara. So my time of the Rebbe, we'll give you that piece since it's so exactly what you just asked. We'll just go ahead. Dixiv begishtam, right? It's when they approach. Since the avoda performed after dawn is considered a new approach to the mizbeach, it's got to be you need a new washing. So that's the point. The point is bigish tam. Every time you approach, that requires a new washing. But all day, if you're continuing to do different services, there's not a different approach, and therefore you're going to be sufficient with one washing of hands and feet. So my time at the Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon. Why does Rebbe Elazar, the son of Rebbe Shimon, say that what you did at night even continues into the dawn? Diksiv bivoam. It's because it's not bigish tam, it's bivoam. It's when you come to the Beis Hamikdash. You don't have to, it's not just the approaching of the Mizbeach, but even again, it's in that same verse. This is all in Perek Lamed of Shmos, Pasuk Kaf. V'idach nami haksiv bivoam. 1 second. Why doesn't Rebbe say, well, because it says bivoam also, and therefore he should allow the washing at night to apply for during the daytime, since there's only one bivoam? No. Iksiv bigishtam v'lo ksiv bivoam. If it only wrote bigishtam when you come to the Mizbeach, and it didn't write bivoam, I would have thought al kol gisha v'gisha. I would have thought every time you are about to approach the Mizbeach, you have to wash your hands and feet again. Ksasa brachmana bivoam, since the Torah says a bivoam, so once a day is sufficient. It's enough for one day and then that night. V'idach nami haksiv b'gishtam. So in second, but what about Rebbe Elazar, son of Rebbe Shimon? It also says b'gishtam. So how does he incorporate b'gishtam? So iksiv bivoam lo v'loksiv b'gishtam. If it only wrote bivoam when they come, afilu abias rikanis. Even if you came and you weren't doing any service. So then I would think that you, as long as you come into the Beis Hamikdash and you did washing of your hands and feet, so then you'd be fine. But the point is no, it's got to be in order to to do service. If you don't wash your hands and feet in order to do service, so then it's not going to count. Abia Reikanis, 1 second, Haksiv L'Shares, but the Torah specifically says that you're going to do service. No, Ella Begishtam Miboile Likitarav Acha Bar Yaakov. No, so what he does with the word Begishtam is what Rav Acha Bar Yaakov does with it. The Amar of Acha Bar Yaakov, Hakol Modim Bekiddush Sheni. Everybody agrees when it comes to, we said earlier that the Kohen Gadol has 5 garment changes. Before he does the garment change, he does Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, then he goes to the mikvah, then he puts on the new garments, and then he does Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim again. Kishahu Lavash Mekadesh. Everybody agrees that when it comes to putting on, that he does Kiddush Yadayim Viraglayim when he's wearing the garments. The Amar Kra O Begishtam, because it says or when he approaches. Misha Eina Mechusar Ela Gisha Bilvad, meaning that when he puts the garments on at the conclusion of his transition, that's when, after he puts them on again, he's going to wash his hands and feet. The question is, the debate that we will see, this is a debate that is in, I guess we saw it already. This is a debate, I believe, in Maseches Yoma about the nature of the washing of the hands and feet between Tanakama and Rebbe Meir, about whether or not before the Kohen Gadol gets undressed, does he do that, the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, before he gets undressed or immediately after he gets undressed? That's the debate that we have in Maseches Yoma. But everybody agrees that when after he's gone to the mikvah and he's getting dressed, after he gets dressed, that's when he does the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, because Obegishtam implies that only when the last thing to do before you approach the Mizbeach is Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, so that's when you do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And you don't do it before you get dressed, because then you would have to do 2 things before you approach the Mizbeach. You would have to you would have to get dressed, and then you would approach the Mizbeach. So, and so as a result, we're not going to have you do the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim before the person gets dressed, before the Kohen Gadol gets dressed again, because that would require him to then get put on clothing before he would approach the Beis Hamikdash. So, you know what? The pasuk itself says lahakter isha lamali. So why does that pasuk, Perek Lamed pasuk Kaf, say that you have to offer it in a reference a smoke in a fire offering? Why does it specifically mention that step? So ma'adatema hani mili avoda dema'akva kapara. I might have thought that the only time you have to do the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim is for one of the essential avodas. Again, that's the sprinkling of the blood, the putting of the objects on the mizbeach, or the wine or the water libations. Aval avoda de lo ma'akva kapara lo. But maybe one of the things that are not essential for atonement, I would not apply it to. So kamash malan. This is any of the 4 blood services are the ones that are essential for atonement. So that's the receiving of the blood, the slaughtering of the animal, the receiving of the blood, the bringing of the blood, and the sprinkling of the blood. So kamash malan, that it applies even to things like bringing the fire. So we will continue from there, God willing, Motzi Shabbos. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.
So tell me so everyone seems to agree that the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim occurs after putting on the new garments, right? After changing
Correct.
the garments. So then our machloket earlier, whether Kiddush Yadayim was valid once in the morning for the whole day, that was the Kiddush before entering the mikvah?
That was the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim at the very beginning of the day. The
Correct.
Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, right, that we're talking about is required but not ma'akev.
Right. So what I'm talking about, that section was referring to.
That's referring to
sufficient to do Kiddush Yadayim the beginning of the day. So the Kiddush Yadayim before every change of garment would not be ma'akev, right? That's what their
Correct. It would not
machloket
be
was.
makiv. But the machlokas that we just referenced is a machlokas about whether or not you do the kiddush yadayim v'raglayim before you get undressed or after you get undressed in the process of changing to the next set of garments. So you have the Kohen has just finished one service, and before he does the next service, he needs to change into a new set of garments.
Right,
And so as a result, he has to do 5 steps. He has to at least 5 steps. He has to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. He needs to get undressed. He needs to go to the mikvah. He needs to get dressed again, and he needs to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. So there are 5 steps. So the
right,
question is what is the order of those 5 steps? So we know the order of the last two. Or the last three. It's mikvah, getting dressed, kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. That we learn from ubegish tam, because the last step, when he does the kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, the next step he has to do is approach the mizbeach. And so as a result, we know that it goes, the last 3 steps are that order. The mechlokas in Yoma is about the first 2 steps. Does he get undressed and then do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, or does he do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim and then get undressed? But no matter which view you have, all of this kiddush yadayim v'raglayim that we were just talking about, what we just learned is none of those 10 kiddush yadayim v'raglayim are ma'akiv. If he accidentally left them out, it would be okay, because he did the kiddush yadayim v'raglayim at the very beginning of the day.
Oh, so it doesn't matter as long as he did that the kiddush raglayim yadayim v'raglayim at the beginning of the day. The rest of them, it doesn't matter. If he didn't do them, it's not ma'akev. Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
It doesn't matter whether it's the before undressing or after undressing. All of them can
Correct.
be. If he didn't do them, it's for fallen. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Correct. It doesn't
Okay.
matter. To use the language of the Gemara that we just saw, it's mitzvah as opposed to ma'akev. He's supposed to do it. That's the order that he's supposed to do it. There's a machlokas about the order beforehand, and he's supposed to do all of it. But if he doesn't do that kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, the gezerah, the hekesh of a Kohen Hedyot to a Kohen Gadol that we saw from 2 different places, that teaches us that just like the regular Kohen, when he's required to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, a Kohen Gadol would be required, meaning at the very first thing of the day. And when the Kohen is not required, namely in the middle of doing services, so too the Kohen Gadol would not be required, and so as a result, it's not ma'akev. All right.
So they're all the other. I think there are 8 more, right? There are 8 of them, whatever it is. 8. They're a total of 10.
10.
So he does the one in the beginning. So if he doesn't do the other 8 or 9.
There are 5 garment changes. So I think that there's one before anything happens as well, but I'm not 100% sure of that. We gotta go over our
Okay, but there's the one in the morning, and then after
correct.
that,
The one in the morning is definitely ma'akev.
There would be 10 of them, roughly 10,
Correct.
9, whatever. All of them are not ma'akev, except the
Correct.
first one he has to do.
Correct. All right. Have a great day. Have a good Yantif. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.
Next week?
So I don't remember whether I am on for the first days of Yantif or the last days of Yantif. I have to double check, but I believe that we're going to be meeting an hour before Mincha on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I just don't remember whether it's me or Ellie. All right. But Dove will be on Sunday and Monday, and on Monday. Ellie will be on Shabbos and Sunday. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.